So translations are easy, I think. Basically, the trick with translations is you typically start with a point, right? And it might be an entire shape, like which is just essentially 3 points. Maybe it's a triangle, it could be a square or whatever. You have these shapes, and more importantly, you have the points. And translating them, all you're going to do is slide them left or right, or you're going to slide them up or down. And if you think about it, these all have values. Like, let's just make up a value. Let's say this was 3, 5, and maybe this is 3, 8. Right? And this is like, 5, 7. And I made those points up, right? And so when you translate a shape or a point, it'll typically go left or right or up or down. And if you think about it, left and right is really only affecting the x values of the points, right? So if I said left 3, that would be to the left 3, that'd be -3 in the x for the x column, the x part of the point. And if I said +5, that would be to the right 5. So, right, so -3 would be left 3, +5 to the right, 5 to the right would just add 5 to the x values. And similarly in logic, really up and down would affect only the y value. So if sideways affects the x values, up and down would be the y value. So you could go like up 3, that would essentially add 3 to all the y's, or you could say down, whatever value you want. Down 1, you basically have to take away 1. They would all move down 1. And so that's all you're doing. So I don't recommend that people draw translations, because you could easily draw 3, 5, and then you could say, example, what if I said translate this triangle here, and we said let's go, left 1 and up 2. You could take each point and count over left 1, up 2, new point, left 1, up 2, new point, left 1, up 2, new point, and then draw it. But I think that's the foolish way to do it. The best way to do it is just mathematically. So here's what I mean. Here's an example. So if you had a point A that was at 2, 3, and they asked you to go right 2 and down 6 in order to find your new point, and if the point A is that, then the new point would be called A prime. That's the way that's the notation, that's the designation. After a translation, A now becomes A prime to show that it has been moved, right? So all you do here is, remember, graphically is too hard. We can do this mathematically. Right and left are the x values, right? They're x direction. So if this is right 2, that would be +2 in the x direction. And if you're down 6, that's a y value. That's up and down. This would be -6, right? And that makes sense. Down is a negative y direction, and right is a positive x direction. So now my new point, A prime, would simply be add the x's, 4, comma, add your y's, -3, and you're done. No graph necessary, right? So let's do a couple more. Right, here's another point, point P, right? And our job is to find P prime after we've made this translation, right? And they said, okay, we want to go left 6 and up 5. So remember, right and left is x direction, and left is negative. So this is going to be -6 in the x direction. Up 5, that's a positive move in the y direction. So this is going to be +5. Easy, right? Now you look at your P prime, your new point. Add those. That'd be -8, comma, +1. Mellow. Now, one thing is, if we do this in a shape, right? So these are just individual points. What happens if they translate an entire triangle or a quadrilateral or even a pentagon? This is all that you would do in that case. It would essentially be exactly the same. Let's say they said, take this entire triangle ABC with the points A, 1, 5, B, 2, 7, and C, 5, -1. These are totally made up. Whatever. We have 3 points because 3 points make up a triangle. And they say, find ABC prime after it's been translated right 2 and up 5. This is pretty easy. Again, right and left are x direction. Right is positive, so I can write +2 in the x direction, right? And up 5, that's y direction, and up is positive, so that would just simply be +5. And then you do this to each point individually. If A was 1, 5, A prime would be, add those, right? That would be 3, comma, 10. Adding 2 to 1, 5 to 5. Now let's do B prime. If it used to be 2, 7, add 2. Before comma, it used to be 7, now it's 12. And then C, it was 5, -1, add 2. So that'd be 7, comma, 5 and -1 is 4. So there's no problem moving a shape. You literally just have 3 individual points to contend with. You're not going to try to do the whole thing in your head or anything bizarre. Just do 1 point at a time. The only other thing with translations is they might ask you to do 2 translations back to back, basically a double translation. And you'll treat them separately. It'll be the same outcome. Okay, so here's a double translation. Basically, you're going to start with the point A and end up with A double prime because it's undergone 2 translations. And the only advice I have is do not try to do both in your head. Don't say right 5 and then left 1 and then add it. No, I would do them totally separately, right? So the first thing I would do is I'd say starting at A, the first thing is right 5, so that's a positive X is 5, up 2, that's also a positive Y, and then I would get my resulting one, which would be adding these, that looks like 3, 5. And then I would undergo my second translation, left 1, that's a negative X value, and down 1, that's a negative Y value, and then I would get my A double prime, which is definitely 2, 4. It's the same thing as we've been doing for all of them, to just do 2 back to back. If you were super cocky, I suppose you could combine these first and then do it. You know, right 5, left 1 would be a net right 4. Don't even go there. I think that's too tricky. I would do them separately, and then you'll be fine. And remember, you can do it for shapes, you can do it for points, double, singles, anything. These are pretty easy. So hopefully you guys ace this section, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video.